Okay. Hello and good afternoon or good day to all of you. This is going to be the first episode of the Tales from the Crypto podcast. It was something that I'd been thinking of maybe putting together for a little while. I recently began to get into the cryptocurrency space a little bit at the guidance of Ridvan, was one of the biggest people that actually got me to looking into it. And it was something that I had just been putting off for a long time. So, I finally kind of like took the plunge. These are some members of my community and their own online communities who have kind of helped me gain a beginning of an understanding into cryptocurrency. So today is mostly going to be an introductory video of what is crypto, what is blockchain, what are smart contracts, and kind of like how everybody got involved with it. So we're just going to go in the easy way, I think, from the top left hand corner. So with Tembi2, Brento, Your Environment Seattle, Monty, Ridvan, and then Saber. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, tell people about your Twitter channel, tell people about your YouTube if you have one, or your Twitch stream. And then after we do the introductions, then we'll get into kind of like each person's story of like how they got involved in crypto.
My name is Tim B2. Guys have probably seen me in the chat. Don't really have much of a Twitch online presence. I just kind of, float around like a lot of political channels. Yeah, that's going to be my spiel.
Okay. Brento, that would be you then.
Okay. Hey guys. I'm Brento. BrentoBox. I do political panels on Twitch sometimes, and um, as far as getting into crypto, I just had a friend introduce me to it and explain to me what it is and how it functions, and then I've just been learning more about it since then.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Your Environment Seattle.
Hey, this is Carl, Your Environment Seattle. I mostly stream about environmental activism and Seattle local information, and I've started streaming my health walks, basically trying to drop some weight, and so I'm doing intermittent fasting and walks just for my health. And I have many different sort of online personas. I also do some political debates, and I have another channel that's for video game streaming that's languishing a little bit. But I'm not going to go affiliate on this one because just Jeff Bezos.
Appreciate it. Yeah, Monty, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, name is Montreal Player. You can call me Monty. I talk about, I guess, a bunch of stuff conceptually. Usually, I try to turn it into entertaining jokes. But that's it. I've been in crypto, I guess, for a while, and it's introduced me to a lot of concepts about hard money, which I tend to push. I tend to push somewhat consistently, and yeah, that's it. Have a nice chat.
Wonderful. Hello, Ridvan. How are you?
I'm fine. My stream is the same, Ridvan, and I barely stream, and it's very boring unless you like watching somebody reading a technical paper on Chainlink and whatever it entails. And I discovered crypto in 2017, Chainlink in 2018.
Wonderful.
And I'm primarily interested in that.
Me, I am Touring News, or Brad, if you want to call me that. I'd heard about crypto for a very long time. I began to like get some, direct messages from people in probably the spring and or summer of 2019. I never really got around to doing any research on it until it took me a long time of going through monetary systems, global payments, reserve currencies, and so forth. And now I kind of have finally wound up in the point where I just want to keep learning more. So that's why we put this together. And Saber, the last but not least introduction, if you'd like to, please.
Greetings, and thank you for having me on. All right, so I currently make Afrofuturist content on YouTube, video essays to be specific, which has been a pretty fun journey so far, learning about all the stuff and all the potential solutions that certain technologies like blockchain technology can have on like the African continent and whatnot. So yeah, I have a video coming out soon, probably next week, once I hit 4K subscribers, which will be fun. And yeah, that's all. I'll go into the history of like my crypto journey in a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, that's it for now.
Yeah, this is the largest panel that I've actually ever had. I usually kind of try to keep things to 4 people, but there's a lot of fascinating people that I wanted to bring together. So if I do apologize if we have to kind of fight for camera time. But I would just be curious, to everybody out there. I guess like what is cryptocurrency to you in a very like either simple and or broad sense? Some people are going to say it is blockchain. Some people are going to say it's this. Some people are going to say it's that. So I'll just let it be open, to whoever wants to go.
I would say to me, it's an opportunity to like to build to I don't know, like to have a contract for maybe to revisit contract, to revisit contract or to solidify them, codify them in a different way in like a much more, I guess you could say, mechanical way, programmatically, or and not only just that, but like also like we can. Most of my background comes from software, the free software movement, or really reevaluating that. It gives us an opportunity to reevaluate that in some sense to sort of look at this as how can we codify some of the ethos of that movement in a more just way. Free software alone was just like one thing, but it wasn't like it's kind of going awry in some ways. I'm sorry, that's kind of like in the weeds, but
No, this is very good. Like I said, this is going to be just like an introductory show where we kind of like get familiar with one another, and then hopefully we can do something like this in the future. So yeah, who else wants to go in and try to give their attempt?
I think
Oh, go ahead.
I think the main problem crypto is solving is to establish trust between parties that wouldn't otherwise trust each other, right? I mean, any kind of community and transaction is essentially based on trust, right? However, we found out, I guess, over time that this is subject to manipulation, fraud, bad faith actors, things like that, and making things open source, and I guess finding some way to solve certain trust issues when there's a lot of uncertainty is essentially the problem crypto is trying to solve, and then we can find, and as I guess technology is going to develop, we're going to find more applications on how we can essentially verify trust between two parties that wouldn't otherwise trust each other, and therefore facilitate transactions between people in a way that that you can count on. I think that's the main promise of blockchain and cryptocurrency at this point.
Mm-hmm. I guess I see it as like I see it as kind of inevitable. Well, once it was explained to me as exactly how it functions, it seems like the next inevitable step in like technology. The fact that people can actually interact anonymously in like a trustless environment, like that people can actually work together on these exchanges and in this way. I think that it's just going to be like the next step in the internet.
Okay. What do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I started my journey into crypto way back when I bought the home that I'm sitting in, which was around 2007, a bit before the financial crisis, and that definitely, I think, led directly to the organizing of crypto and cryptocurrency, and I see cryptocurrency as a way of disintermediating governments from private exchanges, and as an anarchist, that's really inspiring that we could use software. I've been a long time member of the free software movement, and there's a lot more to my history with crypto, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Montreal asked an interesting question. How many developers are on the panel? If you're a developer, raise your hand, or if you're Saber, say hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it seems a good amount. Yeah, Ridvan, what do you think crypto is to you?
I think I can what I'm saying is just going to mirror the rest, but I think it's a new way of doing commerce, and especially engaging in trustless transaction between two parties, and in smart contracts specifically. removing the need for third parties and removing the need for powerful entities that can like control and dictate the transfer of wealth and dictating the terms of contract or deciding, hey, we don't believe in this contract or etc. etc. So it basically remove all sorts of malicious influence, third parties, and we become more free in a way.
Yeah, and Saber, to you, and then we'll start off with you next time, Saber. That way you're not always, down at like the bottom of the list.
Cool. Yeah. So I think crypto or cryptocurrencies in general is kind of like a catch-all term. So I think it is important to make that distinction because sometimes when people say when people are talking about cryptocurrencies, they may be talking about blockchain technology itself, or they may be talking about certain coins or certain tokens. And in addition to that, I think it's important to also recognize that not all blockchains or not all cryptocurrencies are decentralized. Not all cryptocurrencies are anonymous. And the reason why I say that is because, as we've seen in the past few years, we do have certain entities coming in and leveraging the technological side of it to further solidify their own stronghold or whatever the case may be. We've seen that in many different cases over the years. But yeah, no, for me personally, I feel like the benefits of blockchain and cryptocurrencies is that it offers an alternate way forward, or a way that we can sort of circumvent the Silicon Valley, essentially. It seems like in the 90s or even in the 80s, you have a bunch of people coming together saying, "Yeah, let's open source everything. Let's develop this platform where everyone can send things across the web, free and open source." But then over time, you have the corporations coming in, taking that technology and then creating these data silos, where now we are only really interacting with under 10 platforms, for instance, whether it's on a particular social network or on the servers that they happen to own as well. So I think this is an opportunity for us to actually take the benefits of that and to provide certain use cases, for instance, like banking the unbanked, for example, or actually providing a true shared economy as opposed to the fake shared economy applications like Airbnb and things like that, as well as even something that I think can link to the previous podcast that you had as well about energy production and whatnot. There's also like certain projects that aim to take, let's say, renewable energy or like the solar energy, for instance, and then tokenizing that so that people can trade that energy across like certain distances. So yeah, the possibilities are endless, and I really do look forward to discussing the different possibilities with you all. So
yeah, I want to just kick right back to you then. Can you give your definition of blockchain for people who might not, we might have been using like a lot of terminology that people that are tuning in for the first time might not even know. So Saber, would you be able to go with that one?
Yeah. So and yeah, I'm not an expert by any means, but from what I can gather.
Oh yeah, by the way, none of us are financial advisors, none of us are experts,
exactly.
None of us are telling you like anything to do or not to do. Some people may say what they think that you should be doing, but again, this is just our opinions, so please do not go off of what we're saying. Yeah, go ahead, Saber.
So yeah, for me, blockchain technology is, blockchain is a kind of distributed ledger technology that can allow us to essentially spread computation across various or a vast amount of computers that essentially act together as one. So there are multiple different components to it, but essentially you can think of a ledger as just like a list of, in a simple case, let's talk about like financial transactions. You have like a list of financial transactions, and instead of literally like writing it on paper and a sole person having that piece of paper and they can edit it however they want, they can change things around. The ledger itself is distributed across various different computers, and they're all essentially updated at the same time, so that everyone has an idea, or everyone can come to a consensus as to what the current state of the network is. And yeah, in the case of something like Bitcoin, which I suppose will be the easiest example because it's considered to be the first generation of blockchain technology because it just handled basic financial transactions as opposed to the innovations like smart contracts and more. But yeah, in the case of Bitcoin, for instance, there's a stack of technology that come together to actually make this possible. So that you can have a decentralized, censorship-resistant peer-to-peer network that anyone can access without having to go through any kind of central middleman that almost by necessity has a kind of unjust authority over the people that actually use it. So
Go ahead, Monty.
I have what I think is a decent, I guess, non-technical analogy, right? Let's say you didn't want you need to know the time, right? And you have your watch. You have your watch. It tells you the time, right? Watch could be watch could break, could run out of battery. Someone screwed with it or something like that. It'll tell you the wrong time. You might be mistaken sometimes, right? Now, let's say you have two clocks. Let's say you have two clocks and you go to sleep. All right, you wake up and someone messed with one of the clocks, right? And one clock's telling you one time, one clock's telling you the other time. So you're not quite sure which one is the correct time, right? All right. So other scenario, let's say you had 3 or 4 clocks. Okay. Again, same scenario. You fall asleep. Someone messes with one. Okay. Tries to lie to you. Tries to create fraud or something like that. And you look at the clocks, and then you wake up. You're like, oh, one of my clocks is out of date, but the 3 other ones are lined up. So chances are, I know this one's been messed with. Okay, and I can conceivably either correct it or I know that someone's been messing with my clocks. Now imagine you have millions and millions of clocks around the world telling you, and this is kind of the concept of a public ledger, right? That's distributed across computers, right? It's giving you a piece of information, and fraud is very easily detectable because there's so many other people independently running the same program that you can kind of verify. Does everyone agree with that kind of analogy as a non-technical kind of explanation?
I think you should add on to that for the cryptographic assurity of the system, but otherwise it's really good.
Okay.
I would like to add also that Ethereum, well, should we describe the differences between Ethereum and Bitcoin, like the main two, I guess, classes of blockchain that exist currently, or that that are popularized currently?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. Go ahead.
So the first version was Bitcoin, which, or not the first version, but the first class, I would say, is Bitcoin, which is just a distributed ledger as we've described it. The second is Ethereum, which has this concept of smart contracts. It has a layer on top of it stores inside of these transactions pieces of code, essentially. These pieces of code are written in their own language. I don't think it's entirely what they call Turing complete, which means it can do, you can actually store and write data into these, into parts of memory, and it runs inside of its little virtual machine. These are the main two differences between, I'm sorry if I'm not describing it in the best way possible, but these are like the main two different, I guess, like strains of blockchain or chains that exist today. And there's I'm of the mindset that I guess I would say I don't want to put too much opinion into it, but of the mindset that Ethereum is kind of the ones that makes people think, and is the direction that is the direction where all the momentum is behind right now.
Yeah, it's like the evolution.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carl, and then I wanted to try to get Brento and then Ridvan back in.
So I want to go a little bit into the layman's concept of what this chain in the blockchain is, and that is the cryptographic assurity of the system. So when you log into a website or a computer system anywhere, you essentially are conducting one step in that blockchain. And that is that your password, those, let's hope, 20 plus characters that you use to log in to gmail.com is put through a hashing algorithm. And that transforms your password from step 0 to step 1. And the blockchain is doing that kind of a computation hundreds of times an hour or millions of times an hour. It depends on the difficulty of the algorithm and the age of the system. But essentially, that chain of responsibility is the same cryptographic assurity that your password is your password while not storing the plain text. and then it has generations. So it goes one generation to the next through the chain, and that's how the clocks that Montreal Player pointed at. You see 4 clocks. One of them you suspect is wrong, and the other 3 you suspect are right. You use the chain to verify the history of the transitions of those clocks, and that's how you can ferret out whether the one is wrong or the other 3 were tampered with.
This is what we call a consensus algorithm. There's different types of them. I think I'm not sure what the name of the one used in Bitcoin is. But
Your microphone just got very, very quiet. It was okay before.
I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me.
Okay, better.
This is it is. I'm sorry, I turned it down. I turned down the volume over here so nobody hears me. No, this is called a consensus algorithm. What my man just described. I'm sorry, I don't have his environment.
Carl,
yeah, he just described a consensus algorithm. This was the big breakthrough of Bitcoin. I don't think Ethereum has the same consensus algorithm. You guys know it's slightly
it is.
It does.
So it's different in that it doesn't exponentially increase the difficulty in the same way that Bitcoin does.
Would Ridvan or Brento like to jump in and add anything in here with this point?
Yeah, you can also consensus. Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Ruben.
Okay, you can also achieve consensus via oracles, and I think oracles is really the missing piece of the puzzle in blockchain. So let's say you run a smart contract on Ethereum, right? And if you want to use the clock analogy, you can use off-chain data, which is 4 different websites maybe, with 4 different that tells the time. And through the oracles then connected to these website APIs, and then returns the data back to the smart contract. So it delivers off-chain data to the on-chain. And through that, we can then verify, okay, the time is exactly this, since it creates it aggregates all the data that's fed into it, and then through a threshold signatures, computes it, compiles it, and reaches a consensus, and then sends it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I guess we've just been going over basically like what blockchain is. I'm not really sure how many people watching or viewing maybe understand it or understand it now that we've gone over it. I mean, is that kind of what we're doing, or are we just going over sort of essentially like what it is at its most basic?
Either way, go ahead and just say whatever is on your mind. It's very free flowing.
Oh, okay. I mean, everyone's kind of said a lot, right? And I think everyone's been correct, obviously. When I explain blockchain to people, if they ask me what it is, I just basically say it's just like it's a big. I'll always start with Bitcoin, and I just basically say it's just a big shared bank ledger, and everyone's just trusting everyone to keep count of everyone's money, and it's completely open, so you can see every single transaction. There's no transactions that are not public, right? So it always equals 0. So there's no one's making extra Bitcoin. It's completely transparent and always like kept in balance. I guess all of the balances are public, and because of that, it's extremely reliable. And it's been around for 10 years, and it's based on cryptography, so no one can essentially kind of hack it or lie based on the consensus algorithm. If anybody lies, then they get essentially kicked off the network, or they lose their work for trying to update the ledger publicly, and so they don't get paid for doing that, right? They lose their effort. So
are you describing what happens when like a bad fork gets created and how it gets like noticed that it's like an incorrect fork?
I wouldn't use the word fork, because a fork is when someone basically like takes the code and makes a new coin or new chain, right? I'm just basically, it's like a bad report. It's like, why can't I just give myself 100 Bitcoin? And the reason you can't give yourself 100 Bitcoin is because no one else is giving you 100 Bitcoin, right? Like everyone has to agree to give you 100 Bitcoin. So people broadcast a transaction to the network, everyone gets it, and it has to align with everyone else's update. And unless it does that, it doesn't get updated. Am I correct on that, you guys?
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone does.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone does the same math problem, and the way you solve the math. I feel like we're spending too much time on technicals, right? Everyone does the same math problem, and the way you do this math problem, at least with the Bitcoin thing, is basically you guess what the possible answer could be, then you run it, then you run the calculations, okay, and you check the answer against what it's supposed to be, right? And then essentially at one point one of your guesses will hit, right? And then a bunch of people will do the same thing. One of their guesses will hit, and they'll be like, okay, here's the guess that I have that hit. Oh, it matches my guess. Oh, it matches my guess. Okay, chances are we have the right sequence. It's like this weird kind of, I mean, that, at least that's how proof of work generally works. I mean, without getting into too many specifics, but essentially you have a bunch of people guessing the answer to some math problem, and that's why it takes increase. That's the difficulty rate that goes up, because the guesses become more difficult.
There
You
was
know
some-
what? I think.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So okay. So first of all, I kind of slightly disagree with something that Brento said, in the sense that we have to trust each other. And I think the brilliant thing about the technology is that we actually do not need to trust each other. That's the thing.
Right.
So it's a trustless network. You trust the laws of mathematics and physics. You say, okay, I trust this. That's all. You don't need to trust the actual person to say, all right, you're gonna give me this particular thing, right? So
Yes.
but yeah, just more broadly, I think it's important to, well, not important. I think I like to really break it apart into three main different like paradigms within the blockchain space. So like I said before, the first generation is where you have just the basic financial transactions. Then you had Vitalik comes along and he's like, I like this, but I want to be able to...
Vitalik Buterin is the person
Yes,
that created Ethereum.
Well, yeah, he's
Yes,
one of the
correct.
people
Okay,
who came in to create Ethereum, right? And he had the idea that you can take this to the next level by actually programming the money, and that's essentially what a smart contract is. Instead of me just sending you money, you can have code inside of it to say something like, okay, if you draw me this picture, 1 ether will go to you no matter what, and that's like put inside some kind of decentralized escrow, so to speak. And you can verify that, okay, once I finish this thing that we've instantiated beforehand, that will automatically get executed. And then you have the third generation, which essentially acknowledges some of the problems that Ethereum has with like scalability, and whatnot. I'm sure some of you may have heard of the CryptoKitty scandal that happened a couple of years ago. I'm sure we can talk about that, where the network basically got grounded down to a halt because of it just couldn't handle that many transactions. So then you have the third generation blockchains like Chainlink, which I'm sure some of you are huge fans of, and Ethereum 2.0, which is trying to address these particular things. But I think one thing that we can do in this podcast is to actually talk about like the origins and why Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they were, actually decided to create Bitcoin in the first place.
Yeah, let me see. I've been trying to formulate a question in my mind related to this, so let me see if I can articulate this one. So, Carl, your Environment Seattle, you mentioned that your political ideology closely aligns with or is anarchistic. And I've been slightly getting interested in cryptocurrencies because of my growing resentment towards central banking systems, commercial banking systems, the monopolization of currency by powers that we have no democratic control over, or so forth. So I've been trying to develop a little bit of a thesis in my mind as to explain to people how I think that if we can find a cryptocurrency, the one that we're going to reference at the moment right now would be Bitcoin, that can be a payment system internationally. And, Saber, you mentioned this could be for unbanked people in Africa. This could be for unbanked people on the Americas or other continents as well. So I've been trying to come at it through a lens of, is this a way of defanging the power of central bank systems, of authorities, of kind of governments and so forth, and getting to like more of a monetary system that we can control. So does this question at all line up why Satoshi might have begun to develop his project?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, exactly. All right. So yeah, Bitcoin was essentially, like I said, created by the pseudonymous entity by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm sure everyone, this name has essentially been deified at this point. And their white paper was outlining the protocol, right, that was basically released in 2008 as a response, or most people believe it's as a response to the downfalls of the financial institutions, which came to a head when the stock market crashed, sending the world into like disarray, right? And some people believe that this is the fault of big government. Some people believe it's the fault of like a few crony bankers, and others believe that it's an inevitable function of this capitalist system, right? And like whatever the problem may have been, Bitcoin was essentially supposed to be like one of the solutions, a way for people to have to take control of their financial lives without having to rely on this middleman. Many of whom were able to walk away from that crash with nothing more than like a slap on their wrist, right? And today we are facing like one of the most like catastrophic events in modern history, once again turning like the economic sector on its head. Meanwhile, the Bitcoin network, as and many other cryptocurrencies are still like ticking away like clockwork. They're still mining blocks and whatnot. So when it comes to like what actually is Bitcoin, I would define it to be a like decentralized, censorship-resistant, like immutable, peer-to-peer electronic cash system which runs on a blockchain. And like most people will be lost immediately just by saying that, but I think it's important to take note of like all of these elements that come together to create this permissionless environment that allows anyone in the world to use a network without trusting a single party. So as I said, like Bitcoin is this first generation of blockchain technology, right? Blockchain being, again, just to rehash, just so that it can seep into people's brains, it's a distributed ledger or account that allows a network of computers to record transactions, essentially ensuring that they're identical across the entire network. And approximately every 10 minutes, a new block of transactions is added to that public ledger, which is cryptographically linked to the last one. In other words, once a transaction is confirmed, it's final. Even if you had like more computing power than Google, it will literally take you thousands of years to reverse a single transaction. So that's the thing. And like people may be asking themselves, so what's stopping someone from just running a node and inserting a fraudulent transaction, gifting themselves or someone else like 1 billion Bitcoin, for instance? So in the white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto is, this is kind of held to a very, very high standard in the community. In fact, some people see it as gospel, but like that sentiment alone isn't enough to keep people from destroying the network for their own like financial or personal gain, not to mention the central banks and governments around the world who have expressed a great deal of like disdain for the technology already. So the solution that Satoshi came up with is to financially incentivize the miners by rewarding them for securing the network with the transaction fees collected from that set of transactions, as well as a block reward, which is a predefined amount of Bitcoin, which is created every 10 minutes. So the miners are people who essentially run the Bitcoin software, and they essentially race, as was said before, to solve this cryptographic puzzle. Now, these puzzles are like computationally expensive, meaning that the miners, they have to spend electricity up front to solve it. And once they do, the answer to that puzzle becomes the link or chain in the blockchain, right, between the current block of transactions and the last one. So before these rewards are released, the newly formed blocks are checked by other nodes in the network to see if it adheres to the rules of the protocol, right? And if it doesn't, then that would essentially get blocked. It'll be rejected, and the whole process starts again. And this is essentially putting the miners at a loss due to the amount of electricity that they had to spend in order to do that. So, like, since 2009, this is the thing that I would like people to realize. Since 2009, blocks have been mined approximately every 10 minutes without fail. And you can check the block explorer. You can go on, I think, blockchain.io or something like that, and you can see from the from now to the very first transaction, how like every transaction it matches up. You can put the hash into a hashing software to see that everything adds up basically. And there is a possibility that someone can change the history, but as I said before, this will take a long time, like generations, in fact. And when it comes to the Bitcoin protocol, the longest chain of blocks is considered the true chain, right? Because of the combined electricity that has been used over time. This is what's known as proof of work. It's you're proving the work that's actually been done in the network. So if someone wanted to change the past or change a past transaction, they would have to redo all of that work, as well as catching up to the current block, all of which would cost a significant amount of electricity. In fact, the only way to catch up would be to have like 51% of all of the combined computing power of every node in the network, which is, like I said, you'll need planets or like the amount. Yeah. So that's essentially the thing, right? It's all of these different aspects coming together to create an environment, this permissionless environment that I was talking about.
I wanted to go over to Montreal Play. That was a very good explanation, and I'm going to be rewatching that part to listen to it, another time or two. Yeah, Monty, I did want to come back to you because you mentioned, so I'm going to go to Monty and then to Ridvan. You had mentioned, you're interested in hard money. I was kind of framing, cryptocurrency as a potential anarchist solution to banking systems.
Yep.
So where is some of your thinking within these two kind of ideas?
Right. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, where do you start with that? I mean, I guess that's the after you explain like what blockchain is and how it works and stuff like that, the end question is like, okay, so what does it do for me, right? How am I going to use it? I mean, as great an idea as it is, okay, any great idea like Betamax, okay, is not going to be worth a damn if nobody uses it, and so I guess the big benefit that's immediate to society that I like about Bitcoin, or about basically some kind of hard currency. And hard currency means it's very, very difficult to create more of it, right? And once there's 21 million Bitcoin at some point, that's it. You can't create more of it. And so that's it. I think hard money changes a lot of the dynamics in how we use money and how we spend things, that I think over time they change the dynamics in a way, or they change your own personal transactions, your own personal decision making in a way that could be very beneficial to society. In that, I mean, I don't even know where to start, but because I was kind of hoping we'd just get into it point by point, but that's it. But in a nutshell, I think if you have a currency that essentially represents all the transient value in society, and the more value gets pumped into society by people's labor, by what they pump into it, by what gets created, and this static kind of entity represents that, it means that when you save your money, when you don't spend it, okay, it represents more of a piece of that pie, and therefore accumulates kind of purchasing power over time. And I think if people had a tool like this that was not able to be corrupted by bad actors, it would be very beneficial. It would be very beneficial in the way that we start to form relationships in the society, and we could. And I'd like to get into it on how I think it'll influence how we think about assets, on how it'll influence consumerism, which I think is a plague on our planet, and among other things. So as a general overview, that's my kind of that's how where I feel the first, I guess, big boon for society would come from, in terms of adopting some kind of worldwide hard currency that we can all kind of count on.
Yeah, that's interesting. You and I have gone back and forth on this one before, and I appreciate you bringing your perspective, because I'm not entirely there yet, but learning. We're in kind of just like an open position, I think, at the moment. Ridvan, is there something that you'd like to kind of like chime in with here? I don't even remember what exactly the full question is.
Well, to anyone that's curious about the challenges of blockchain, Ari Jules, who basically conceptualized proof of work in 1999 along with Marcus Jacobson. And proof of work is, as we all know, that's what Bitcoin is based on. So he appeared in a podcast, and he talked about the challenges of Bitcoin and the challenges of blockchain. And he mentioned the 6 specific challenges. So if you're curious, watch that video. I think it's called the problems or challenges with the blockchain, and just Ari Jules. I can type his name so you want to know how to spell it. And he talked about, first of all, we have the scaling. As we all know, it now requires huge amounts of power now to mine Bitcoin. I think like you have a whole factory worth of computers and CPUs running. So it obviously gets more expensive. But then we also saw it also got expensive with the Ethereum, with the DeFi. CryptoKitties, of course, first, but now also with the DeFi craze. And then suddenly you have to pay like almost $80 just in gas to swap a currency to another currency. So scalability is an issue, and that includes also roll-ups. Then we have the confidentiality. We have to ensure that the transactions protects the privacy of the user. Also, what it's been used for, how much has been put in, the terms of the contract, the outcome, and who gets the money, etc. Chainlink actually is also, they're actually working on this with Mixicals and Deco, which I highly recommend to look up. Then we, of course, have the correctness of the codes. It needs to be very good, easy, programmable language that people can read. I think Solidity is now what most smart contracts are written in. And then, of course, the thing that I'm mostly interested in is getting off-chain data onto the blockchain. And then the last part is, of course, making it accessible and easier for legacy systems to migrate whatever they have onto the blockchain. And from here, as I said, smart contracts is basically the future, because smart contracts, even a currency is kind of a contract. Like countries agree on, hey, we're going to use this money, and we're going to base this on this, for example, petrodollar. And smart contracts, I mean, I know it's called smart contracts, but they should really be called digital tamper-proof agreements. You can't alter it. And with the oracles, as I mentioned before, you kind of solve a lot of the problems. And I don't know how much you want me to get into this.
I think that we can come back into oracles and smart contracts in. We'll return to it very shortly. I don't exactly know how to run this show. I'm sitting with 6 people that have much larger brains than I on these topics. What might you like to add in at this point, Tanvi?
I would like to I guess come back and ask a question to some of the other panelists about. Well, first I would like to say one thing. When we're talking distributed ledger tech, I understand that, in the world we live in today, we're accounting for, money, but I don't think that's going to be the thing that where we're going to end up. I feel as though we can account for other things that's not just money, maybe time, maybe some other form of like accounting for things, like accounting for value. And that's the thing that I going back to the heart of like this whole panel when you touring with that you asked me is like, what do I want out of what I see, where can I see it going? It's like, well, maybe making us think a little bit harder about what the things that we value, and using that transparency that we can get to having some type of system to actually like bring, I guess that type of what we value will sort of just emerge from that. I don't know, maybe not. That's kind of this is a beginner conversation. I didn't want to go too far into those things, but the second thing I wanted to also bring up was how do you guys feel about the human factors? Like, this is one thing that I'm passionate about, is like how we use it, like the usability of it. Like back when I first got into Bitcoin, like, you had to like, download the client or whatever, and it's this old UI, it looks like, you know what I mean? If you were like 2013, it was like this old UI. People were like, bro, what is this? You're sending a transaction, you're typing it in, and it's a hash. You mess up on it's very hard to use. I think some of these things are easier now, but if you want adoption to like really kick off, is like getting one is like, we're talking a lot of technical information. We're brain dumping that stuff, which is good to have as record, so people can understand how it works. But getting them to use it, how do you all feel about the current usability of Ethereum and Bitcoin?
I'll just put
in
in some primer information here, and then we'll go to Carl, and then we'll go to BrentoBox. I'm just gonna kind of like speak about some of the things that I've heard recently from usability, and I'll allow you all to kind of go off of that. So it seems to me that in, I would say, the past couple of weeks, there has been an adoption of PayPal claiming that they are going to allow transactions to be taking place in Bitcoin, but they're going to have to route through fiat currencies. So it's not exactly like you're using Bitcoin. It's kind of still like you're routing through. Another one that I wanted to bring up was a few days ago, Iran, maybe about a week ago. I think they, please fact check me on this, YouTube viewers and Twitch viewers. I think they outlawed individual miners from being able to mine Bitcoin anymore, and they issued 1,000 permits and or licenses to designated specified people. That way they're going to have subsidized energy from the Iranian government in order to mine. And then when they mine, they have to sell the Bitcoin to the central bank. Iran is having really big problems with their currency at the moment due to United States sanctions, and they're beginning to do currency swaps with China via the yuan as well. But it seems that the central bank of Iran is trying to begin to accumulate, Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Another thing that I recently just saw was Coinbase is going to be offering I don't know if it's a debit card or a credit card, but you get if you choose, you can get a 1% cash back in Bitcoin, or I think you can get a 4% cash back in Ethereum is one of the ones that I was going to see. So with announcing some of those, I only wanted to really ask like one more question. Is there a way that you can engage in Bitcoin transactions outside of needing like an internet connection? So that's one that I would kind of like to hear. And then I think the 10B's question of how are these, and when we say Bitcoin, it's not the only one that's out there, but I think it kind of seems to be the one that either a lot of people are familiar with or it is the closest to being adopted into like international payment systems. So I kind of just wanted to put some of that info out there, and now I'll let Carl and then Brento and then everybody else go.
So
Ooh, you're our robot friend for a moment. Hold on just 1 second. We got you on robot mode. Can you?
will. How's that?
Yep, better.
Okay, so basically on usability, contactless payments are taking over in a major way because of COVID, because of the availability of cheap smartphones, less than $400, and you can have a pretty good smartphone. And I'm
Google
really
Pixel
excited
3a
about
shout
that.
out.
Yeah. So it's into like the security and assure. Again, okay.
Yeah.
I think I should back off. I'm on a low spec computer.
Seattle, you sound like a robot again.
Sorry, I'm on the low spec computer right now, so I think I might back off a bit.
Okay, go ahead, Brento.
Well, to answer your question, is there any way to do a Bitcoin transaction outside of the internet? The only way would be to have, or any kind of blockchain transaction would be to actually have like a key that is corresponded to an address with, some kind of currency in it, and then literally like give the key, which is just a series of, of like characters to someone, and then be like, here now, and now they can access the address. That would be the way to do it, but it wouldn't change anything on the network. You would just be giving someone access to your coins by giving them the key to access it, right? So you could do it that way, but it doesn't change anything on the network.
And then to Montreal, Ridvan, and Saber. Yeah, so one thing that I kind of try to think about when I think about Bitcoin is, are we going to shift from it being viewed as like an asset to invest in and to hold into it actually being like a usable medium of exchange? So where is some of the three of your thinking in relation to this question, to what 10B2 said, to what I was saying about central banks adopting and so forth? That's kind of how I'm trying to frame this part.
Right now, I have a difficulty seeing Bitcoin as anything else other than a store of value, just because, and I kind of by design, right? It's kind of, I mean, compared to a lot of other cryptos, it's slow, it's clunky, it's expensive to transfer, right? I mean, compared to other cryptos, I'm saying slow, but in 10 minutes, 10 minutes is slow, right? But that's it. But it's just kind of right now, it seems the best use case for Bitcoin is to use it as a hedge against your fiat currency. Pump your savings, or pump some small percentage that you're really willing to take your risk on in your savings, right? And then just keep it there forever, well, for a long time, and hope your asset kind of grows, right? And because transferring it out, you can't buy gum with Bitcoin. You can't pay for, I mean, you can, okay, but I mean, it's pointless. It's going to cost you $5 to send 30 cents worth of value, right? Or something like that. So right now, it seems like the only good use case for Bitcoin is keeping larger and larger amounts in there and only taking them out when you need them, right? Making you think very carefully about when you're going to take your Bitcoin out. So that seems to be the only, I guess, realistic store of value, or sorry, the only realistic application for Bitcoin right now is to store value like that as some kind of like long-term storage, savings tool. Does everyone kind of agree with that assessment?
I disagree slightly.
Okay.
I think that obviously there are issues with the Bitcoin network. As I've mentioned before, it's not even my favorite. It's just, I think it's the easiest one to use to describe like blockchain technology at its most fundamental level. But I do think that there there are like scaling solutions. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Lightning Network, which aims to
Yep.
try to attempt to solve some of these issues. And again, there are issues with that. Well, it's relatively new, so it's not as tested as the main chain, of course. But I've seen some promising things come out of that. And on the topic of like sending Bitcoin via internet, I did read an article not too long ago which went into how one can actually send Bitcoin from one person to another without an actual internet connection at all, without involving just paper transactions, right? Writing down my private key, which is not advisable to anyone watching.
Yeah.
Do not give a private key to anyone. Your key is your
Right.
coin, yeah? Not your keys, not your coin. So yeah, but also, right, you can send it via Bluetooth. There's no reason why you can't send it via Bluetooth or infrared, or I can hash a transaction in the form of emojis and send you a message in the form of emojis. Like, the possibilities are kind of endless to some degree. But yeah, no, I think in terms of like usability more broadly, I definitely resonate with what 10B2 was saying. A couple years ago, it was almost very, very inconvenient to send things from one place to another, right? You'd have to buy it here. If there was a specific coin that you wanted, you'd have to send it to another transaction, make that trade, send it from there to your private key wallet. If you're holding it in a paper wallet, that's another extra step of complexity there. And I've noticed that over the years it has definitely become easier to do that, right? Like like more places are offering like direct crypto transactions via like debit cards than before. There's also just user experience in general, right? As you were saying, the user interfaces for a lot of these platforms can be a bit challenging sometimes, and usability is one of the most important things, right? Just in terms of just user experience development in general, right? There's some programmers in here, so I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? Having buttons are easy to click, making it as easy as possible for someone to just purchase a thing and without going through like 10 different steps, because the average person, like you said, I'm not going to really go out of their way unless the benefits are like so substantial that like it's
the
going to
average person doesn't want to know what crypto is. They just want to use it and buy
Right.
stuff.
Exactly.
They want to solve their own problems.
Let's go to 10B2 real quick, then to Carl, and then to Ridvan.
To that point, I would like to say, is that a good thing though? Because I'm of the mindset, I've come to the mindset that it is good for people to understand cryptography, just as it's an educational thing, as just purely from education. I believe
agree,
that the public should be educated, and I'm very, very passionate about that. And that's, so the usability, I understand the usability. Like, I kind of pose the question because it is kind of like the thing that I end up like, man, I'm telling people like, you need to download this app and send it here. Whereas like, well, I kind of thought about it, I was like, why don't I just teach them how to use cryptography? Why don't I teach them how to just...
I don't think it's mutually exclusive though. That's the thing. I'll jump in real quick. Like, you can have both. For instance, I'm sure there are some Linux users in here, and although the underlying thing is still, the ethos is still the same, it's easier than ever to just download the distro onto your computer and use it straight away. And from there, you can dive deeper into the actual nitty gritty of the technology as well. So yeah, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. Jump in
with something that I wanted to say, and then to kick it to Carl up above me. To me, I want to move into potentially like crypto payment systems in order to take away the ability of bankers or so forth to like generate transaction fees. So is there a way that we can, like you're saying it's expensive to send like Bitcoin, so are we just developing something that is also going to be monopolized by the banking system, where we're trying to get around dealing with fees, we're trying to get around with like transactional costs? So I wanted to throw that out there as it's not a question, it's not a statement, but it's just like a thought of mine of we're all trying to actively get away from these intermediaries who are doing nothing except saying like, okay, I'm going to do this and you do that. And then, so Carl, I wanted you to be able to answer. And then I think Ridvan, this is where I'm trying to be able to shift it into you to be able to like go into smart contracts and how potentially that's going to get away from the bank being the intermediary to maybe like a node being the intermediary. So Carl first, and then Ridvan.
Great. I hope I'm sounding all right. But that was a fantastic point, Turing, because I think that part of the user experience is going to be the question, why is this better than cash? Why is this better than my bank account? And the answer should sort of involve the idea that you can exfiltrate your Bitcoin from whoever is holding it, whoever is making that transaction easy for you. If it's Coinbase, is it Robinhood, is it anyone else? Who is going to let you exfiltrate your money, and how does that process work? And that's something that I think the whole industry needs to really show their excellence in. And the first product that does that, I think Coinbase does a pretty good job, but the first product that really makes integrated payment and coin filtration priority is going to be very important.
I kind of caught that at the back end there, but yeah, you are having some internet tech issues out that way, I think.
I have a question. I have a statement that I'd like to bring to KP or Carl. He said that you wanted people to be able to exfiltrate their coin fast enough. In our current landscape right now with legislation trying to be pushed for having backdoors in code, like, or backdoors in cryptographic what's it, curves, I guess you could say. Yeah, I do believe that is very important. But how are we going to be able to move? I'm sorry, I'm getting scatterbrained right now. I think that is very important. But could be at the same time right now there are people who are trying to change that, trying to make it to where they can also take money out of these accounts, and so to speak, or like try to undermine the system by just undermining cryptography in general.
We did
which
lose
I don't
your
think
video.
is going to be possible.
We did lose your video, Tempe, too. Oh, okay, you're back.
Good?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm going to drop my video too. Let me drop my video. That'll my my situation. Very sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Did
There's me again. All right.
So, I hope that fixes my voice issue.
Yep, better.
Great. Yeah, bandwidth constrained over here. I think you're right in that attacks on the network are always going to be a problem. We're going to be attacked by nation states who try to accrue crypto, and they try to, basically overwhelm the mining pools. China was accused of that several years ago. These are all attacks that we have to watch out for, but there's no single, there's no magic bullet. We have to work on all these fronts in order to have a better independent currency system.
So This is a good point too. Then I wanted to bring you in, Ridvan, because I know that you've been doing a lot of research into oracles and into smart contracts, and how this could potentially play a role. So how do you think the smart contract system might be able to step in and be the intermediary instead of it has to go through the traditional payment routes and systems that we have at the moment?
Well, if we can start with, for example, security, Chainlink is working on something called Mixicals, which will come out soon, and also something on Deco. And I actually linked the IC3 Grand Challenges, and you can see Deco is one of the first projects. So,
can you give at all a definition of what a Mexical is and what Deco is, by chance?
Yeah, a Mexical stands for is two words. It's mixer and oracles mashed together. So what it does is it mixes. Let me give an example. I'll use cryptography's two favorite people, Alice and Bob. So we got Alice and Bob, and they want to engage in a bet, right? And and they want to engage in a bet that the stock ticker of Tesla at 12 o'clock is going to be X amount of price, right? And Bob thinks, no, it's not going to reach that price, and Alice thinks, yes, it's going to reach that price. So what they do is they write the smart contract, right? And they flip a coin in that smart contract, and by using Mixicals, that coin assigns then a random pseudonym. So if Alice gets heads, right, Alice gets pseudonym 0, and then Bob gets pseudonym 1. Then the event gets triggered, and they get paid, but they don't get paid to Alice and Bob, they get paid to those pseudonyms. And then you can, of course, create partial privacy by creating more pseudonyms, right? So pseudonym 1, pseudonym 2, pseudonym 3, pseudonym 4, which kind of hides the transaction. And by using the oracle itself, you also hide, or keep it private, what they were actually looking for. And Deco basically uses transport layer security, TLS. Now, I'm not a technical guy, so I can't exactly explain how HTTPS and TLS works. Somebody else might be able to explain that.
I think it'd be pretty boring for this conversation.
Excuse me?
I think that would probably be pretty boring as far as this conversation goes. All right.
But what it uses is Deco then uses the TLS, right, for that website, and the contract gets triggered at that exact time. So that same TLS gets used at that exact time and thrown in the contract as a boolean, right, true or false, or it's 1 or 0. So let's say Tesla stock reach, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there, okay, $300, right? So that gets returned as a bit number, 1 or 0. So 1 was the trigger for $300 and above. It gets thrown back to the smart contract, and Alice or Bob or whatever wins the bet. Nobody knows it. So confidentiality through the Mixicals and through Deco is kept secret. So you don't have to worry about where you spend it. Now, thanks to the oracles and TLS, you can also make sure that it's audited, because what they do is they lock it and sign it with their private keys. So if somebody needs to see it that they're not engaging in some nefarious behavior, like they're not drug dealers or anything, an entity can then request that to audit it, and they will have to unlock it via their private keys. Of course, not show it, but just unlock it so they can show the data there in the smart contract that this is what they're using for. And through the oracles, of course, it also ensures that the oracles can't cheat them, because if the oracles try to cheat them, you can say, hey, you're not fulfilling the parameters of the contract that we specified in here. And in terms of not needing an entity, the beautiful thing about an oracle is that it's decentralized. So we got God knows how many node operators out there, and it's in every node operator's best interest to run a node without needing and honestly, because what you do is you stake your own amount of assets, your own amount of links that you're holding. I'm using Chainlink because Chainlink really is, well, the decentralized oracle. And it's not in your best interest to cheat people, because you're putting your own money, your own links in there to provide verifiable, high-quality data into that smart contract. So you eliminate a third party, right? You eliminate anyone else. You're just using the node, and you're using the node for whatever value of the contract is. And if the contract is true, and it gets triggered, and everybody's happy, then the node operator gets rewarded, like, I don't know, 0.1% or 1% or whatever. So you don't really need the banks. Of course, you still need the banks in a way that, because banks will also still use smart contracts when they're doing deals with each other, including countries. I mean, the derivatives market is huge. So you can't really escape the banks just yet. But what you can do is you can not use the banks. And I'm pretty sure they're working on simplifying smart contracts. So you just write the general terms that you want, and then it kind of converts into a smart contract. I think Microsoft Word now has a Ethereum application actually now. If you look it up, you can find it on the internet. Where you then, so it basically enables like mom and pop to write a contract and put it on Ethereum smart contract.
Okay, it seems like Monty wanted to say something. I want to try to bring Brento back in, and I'm trying to let everybody have enough time to speak. I hope that it's going okay. So yeah, go ahead, Monty. And then there are a few questions that I do want to bring up after this part.
I think in terms of the bank's role in terms of crypto, if crypto can really be like the panacea of like person-to-person transactions, right? Whatever form it takes in the future, I think the banks will finally. I think their role really is to offer that UX, right? Is to offer the services so you can visualize your assets properly and stuff like that. Because I don't think, more and more banks will just become software companies that manage this type of thing. I mean, in an ideal world, I think, because again, back to it's nice, if people understand, like how crypto works and stuff like that. But I think people are just they're more concerned with like, am I going to get healthcare? Pay my bills. I got to send my kids to college. What am I going to do about food? Stuff like that. And as far as education goes, I think, if you could make it as easy as using your debit card at this point, that'll be fine for people. And I think that's what you really need for any kind of adoption, right? Where it's still kind of like crypto is still kind of in the realm of tech nerds at this point, kind of like the internet was at one point. And now it's everywhere. So as soon as we have the equivalent of like using crypto to, as for pornography, in terms of like engines of adoption. I think that's where we need to go, and I think that's where the banks are gonna come in. They'll start making it basically easier to, you're already used to dealing with the banks, you're already used to some kind of infrastructure, you're already used to this thing. We're gonna help you, with you log into your account and you manage like the crypto you have with us on your on not your personal keys or whatever. We're kind of custodians for your crypto. I think that's kind of their role, and hopefully they'll be able to actually facilitate it for people. And then once more tools get developed, people, I guess, hopefully they'll have more of a private, localized control over what they're doing.
Go ahead, Brento, and then I have some frame to try to make.
Sure. No, I think you're 100% right, Montreal. Just something I think some people, I'm sure everyone here realizes it, but some people don't realize is like, when if you send Bitcoin or crypto between addresses, you have to actually put in the right address, and if you put in the wrong address, it's gone forever. And so it's like, if you have like a Bitcoin or something and you send it to the wrong address, that's it.
My wrong address, or my correct address, if anybody wants to make a mistake, is in the chat. So if you ever make mistakes, make sure that you use that one.
Yeah.
Or password as well. Like a fun story, a fuck ton of Litecoin gone. This guy. Don't be me. Don't be me.
I'm sure we've all had those situations.
Yeah, I've lost a bit of it. Yeah.
It happens to everybody once, and like once it happens, dude, oh my god.
It happens to us, so it doesn't have to happen to other people.
Yeah.
Here's what not to do.
One thing that I will say before Turing jumps back in is, again, like, once you enter the crypto space, your security, your cybersecurity concerns get increased by like 10 times. It's like, okay, now I need to do two-factor authentication and everything. I need to have VPNs, all of this stuff. So yeah, if anything, that is one positive, I suppose.
Yeah, but I was just gonna, there's no way it could ever completely be mainstream or even partially mainstream if people can literally lose, what could potentially be a lot of money just by putting the wrong digit, in a chain that they have to put in every single time. People will lose their shorts. They can't do that. So
I believe that happened to a project. Was it Parity? Something with them. I don't know. There was like a big falling out about like forking Ethereum because one of the contracts. I guess the way they set it up, or they may have lost a password or something. It just went horribly awry, and that was like it was a big point of contention because people were like, "No, why are we forking the network for these guys? Like, why are we forking like us?" So yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was, mind you, this was millions. It wasn't. Yeah.
I don't think it's ready for prime time now yet.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier, Saber, you actually brought up that we're going into, or we're in the middle of an economic crisis that is really, at least in modern history, mostly unforeseen. And some background that I would give into this is, you have hyperinflation hitting multiple different nations at the moment against the dollar because they can't afford to pay their debts. You have central banks all around the world, doing things that were never within their purview, whether it's purchasing treasuries or bonds or mortgage-backed securities, or some even, thinking about going into equities and so forth. So what I'm going to try to kind of like, I actually lost my train of thought. What I really kind of want to get into is you have some countries talking about their central bank digital currencies. You have some that are just like doing more and more of the fiat. Then you have some people who are talking about like trying to go back to tying the fiat currency to gold. There has even been some mention of tying fiat currency to Bitcoin as like moving back into like away from monetary system 3 back to like a monetary system 2 and so forth. So I'm kind of just like trying to ask like a very open-ended question of how do we think now? I don't think that anybody thinks it's all going to blow up in 12 months or 18 months or anything like this, but where are some people thinking that the monetary system as we know it is kind of like heading in the short term and the short term, the medium term, and the long term? And another question that I kind of have like in this realm, I had it so good in my head before, and I did butcher a lot of what I wanted to come out with, is are central bank digital currencies cryptocurrency? To me, it's kind of just a reimagining of the digitization of the current fiats, and it's not exactly what a blockchain crypto is going to be. You kind of have There was just a meeting at the IMF talking about it the other day. You have China rolling out their DCEP, their digitized yuan, and so forth. So I'll stop there.
Oh, did you want me to go first?
No, it's to anybody really. And I like I said, I didn't get out what I wanted to get out.
I think there is definitely a lot of things that we need to take into consideration, right? Like first and foremost, like the technologies that have sort of come out from the blockchain revolution in the past 10 years. Well, there's been a lot of shit coins, as some that would like to say, for sure, but there are a handful of projects that definitely try to solve some of the fundamental contradictions of the system, or of the economic system. And as we're seeing with the central banks that are coming into play right now, it seems like they're trying to take the benefits of being able to settle payments across the planet in a matter of seconds in a immutable manner. They're trying to take the some aspects of it, but then to try to use it to, again, like I said before, further strengthen the hegemonic powers, so to speak, right? And I definitely do believe that this is where like the people come in, as cliche as that sounds. It's up to us to essentially keep on developing these technologies to keep on providing benefits to the most disenfranchised people that are on this planet. And this kind of ties back to what was said before, in the sense that, like, how is this going to benefit the average person, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot, and this kind of ties in to how I actually got involved with the cryptocurrency community in the first place back in 2017. Is that in the West, the systems, they seem to work fine until they don't. And so it seems to be the case that a lot of people in the West don't really understand the necessity for these kinds of technologies. Whereas in Africa, for instance, where I travel quite a bit, you see people, you see like the worst of it, so to speak. You see the people that are being affected the most by this globalized system that we're all living under. And although we're in different land masses, it seems like we're all separate, but the system really is like really interconnected. And a lot of the problems that exist in, let's say, the most developed countries in the world are often dumped onto people in like the global south. And this is one of the things that I try to talk about in my next video. If you want to watch that, go ahead and subscribe. But yeah, like it's there's a multitude of different issues. And when it comes to the different generations of crypto, as I was alluding to earlier, right? They're all trying to solve these fundamental issues in their own specific way. And a project that I'd like to shed some light on is the Cardano project, which is being developed by IOHK, which is and the founder of that is one of the persons who founded Ethereum, right? But then he split off and did his own thing because he wanted to take a more scientific, rigorous approach and like get the underlying technologies like peer reviewed and whatnot. And someone like him, he has been a part of projects that actually go into Africa, for instance. I think a couple of years ago they went into Ethiopia and trained like a bunch of women, like a few dozen women, to code in a specific like programming language for blockchain technology. They've also done a lot of work in regards to trying to really shore up the governance systems in many developing countries as well, to really try to counteract these kinds of inherent contradictions. So like it's definitely hard to say where we are going to end up. And it seems like if people do not reconcile with the underlying like contradictions of the system, right, it seems like we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes again and again on different medium. And this is why I think that platforms like this, even though there's obviously it's not the biggest platform in the world right now, but I do believe that this kind of knowledge has to be in the hands of the people. They need to understand that alternatives are out there, because especially in a lot of like leftist spaces, right, we talk about the problems, we talk about all this and that, but we don't necessarily understand the potential technologies that can actually liberate us from those problems. And I think blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies at large can have that potential pathway. So yeah,
I think it's essential. It's essential to me. It's like that's
it's a necessary tool. It's a necessary tool that we need. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I'm sure you're going to say the same thing.
Oh no. I was done.
Yeah, it's totally an essential tool that we need right now. It's like it's too many larger institutions have just so much control over thing, and we've let them over time, and it's time to take things back, and people just need some way to like transact and transfer value between each other. I mean, we need so much more, but I mean, it's one of the backbone kind of systems that we kind of need to transact with each other, and that would allow us to build systems outside of bigger centralized kind of controlled by other people's systems. We need to start helping each other out, but we need to be able to transact with each other. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know, what about gold and stuff like that? It's just like gold's so hard to transfer, right? And I find Bitcoin, if you use it as some kind of hard currency, at least when you transfer it, the relative cost is just is much smaller. You can it's more transportable from one person to another, and if we can have that as some kind of like base medium of exchange to exchange within each other, at least we don't have to go through our trusted third party, which is a bank or a government or some other thing, with someone who's making decisions, okay, and who they're making decisions, but they make decisions for themselves, and if there's costs, they find some way to offload it to somebody, and if there's benefits, they get to reap it. This is not a way to run a civilization, okay? And when people need to start taking it back, and this is one of the tools we need, or something like this is one of the tools we need to start at least doing that, making transactions something that we can control, and we can trade with each other without the sanction of anybody else.
Yeah, what do you think here, Brento?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in relation to the global financial system and the way things currently are. I think like the way it will affect it, it will just basically supplant it. Why I think cryptocurrency is relevant, when a lot of people will say like it's a scam or something like that. I mean, the technology works. It fundamentally works, and since it works, it's possible, and it will grow, and it will just get faster and faster. And just so as a way of like recording and storing and transferring value, nothing will be able to keep up with it. So it will just develop and scale upwards until some slower method is just obsolete, and then it won't have the value that it used to. I mean, the older methods in the financial systems, they won't have the value that they used to, and then it will just no longer be profitable to do it that way. So it will just take over. Period. That's it. So.
Okay, I did want to hear from Ridvan and then from Carl, and then I'm thinking maybe for the last like 15, 20 minutes or half hour, just to like open it up to what some people's, what didn't we get to talk about that you maybe like wanted to talk about or so forth, and then that'll probably bring us like near to the 2-hour position.
Oh, can I say something to Redvan really quick?
No. Yes, you can. Well, of course you can.
Just what you typed something in chat about how leftists, like might have been the pioneers, but the right recognizes the importance, and it's like, like being on Twitch, talking to politics and hearing about leftists and talking to leftists and lots of different ideas about co-ops or consensus and redistributing, decision making and power and money, and it's like just everything I've ever seen, being done in crypto or learning about it. It seems like this is all being put into practice. Within cryptocurrency is people coming up with like voting and protocols and different things like that. And so it's so interesting to me that when I've been talking to people for all this time who are saying that this is the way it should be now and it should move forward, like this is what is occurring in cryptocurrencies, like wealth redistribution and voting and democracy and control of all these types of things. So it's actually happening and it's taking place, even though people are just constantly calling for it and being like, this is what should be done. It's like, this is it. This is what it looks like, I think.
I guess it's because I'm probably too much on 4chan on Biz. People are always right. So.
It's so funny.
Not too much on. Well, whenever I engage in leftist channel, I just see like minimal talk about crypto and blockchain. And that's what frustrates me because, as I mentioned in the chat, because this is going to create a new form of life. It's going to revolutionize commerce. It's going to make sure that we don't have to trust each other anymore because everything is trustless.
Yeah, I think I mean I'll let you kick in here, Montreal, and then Carl, and then we're gonna open it up.
But
I've only oh go ahead.
In terms of using it in poor countries and stuff, there's not much I can say other than I agree because everything has been said.
Oh, what I was going to say was I'm very new to crypto. I mean, we're talking like a month old. And I feel that I'm one of the only people on the left that ever like even talks about it. And I do have people that, have come into my channel many times and said, oh, scam. Oh, like bubble. Oh, tulips. All like this kind of stuff. And this is why I've really been trying to develop that frame of, is it a way of democratizing money? Is it an anarchist lens of taking power away from central banking systems, from needing to get this approved by that chamber of the Congress and then this done by like those people? So I'm really trying to like view it through a lens of as Brento brought up, as Monty brought up, as Carl brought up, like a democratized lens. So go ahead, Carl, as to I guess like my main question, and I don't know if anybody exactly touched on it yet, is do we actually think that central bank digital coins or currencies are crypto, or is this just like their like monopolization of it and like trying to take over it? And I guess like the other thing that I did kind of want to ask earlier is, do people in the panel today think it's a good thing or a bad thing that central banks are potentially considering holding Bitcoin as like a storeholder value? There was Michael Saylor. He converted $454 million worth of his hedge fund into Bitcoin. I've heard rumors that people are thinking Apple or Google may begin to convert some of their cash into crypto in either Q1, Q2, or Q3 of 2021. So do you all think that it's a good thing that some of these like major institutions and power structures are beginning to kind of look at this? I'll give it to you, Carl. Then I just want to open it up to the last, like whenever people have to get going into a free flow.
So I'll say one thing. I've been aware of Bitcoin since 2011, 2012, and I'm a bit black-pilled on it. It has gone through ups and downs, and I have seen what you're talking about, Turing, where central banks are trying to co-opt the blockchain. They're trying to invent their own chains, much like DLive. If anyone remembers the PewDiePie network, DLive TV, you look into how that chain works. It is essentially operating the way a central bank will have their chain operating, where there is one authority to how coins are created, and your transactions are limited by their ability to produce more coin and how they are able to issue profits to themselves rather than the users. And this is how black-pilled I am about it, because I think that we have to be very careful about banks and states co-opting this system. And so we have to continually create additional challenges that will push back against hegemonic power. I really love that phrase. And we just need to do our best to keep fighting. Crypto coin blockchain is one vital tool, and why leftists don't talk about it very much. I think I'm a little more of a pro-tech leftist than some, and that's why I'm okay with it. I'm just a little too black-pilled on the future of our current implementations.
I agree with a lot of that. And I've been feeling, very put simply, I've been feeling the same way. Do I feel that, states, okay, so the perspective that I take is, just going back to what I said earlier, was I don't think this is like gonna happen anytime soon. Obviously, maybe not, more likely not in my lifetime, but I try to get past the whole value part. I try to really just redefine the value part, or at least the way I've come about it, and things that I've read. I'll post some links, but just to get past the value, how can we come up with like standards to I don't know, just have more transparency in supply chains? Like, can we see where things are going? How can we where do things need to go, or where are things being consumed? Like how much information can we bring to the light? Is something that I really, that's where I tend to focus a lot of my attention, as opposed to the purely just how can we integrate this tech into the current system? Like how can the current system use it to Yeah, I don't know, just like because I believe it's just going to try to, I don't know, reinforce itself somehow. That's how I see it. It's the same way. It's just reinforcing itself if we don't be careful as to having values, like having just defining what the values, what are we trying to build on, or where are we going in the whole thing? Because it seems like we're headed in that sort of neoliberal sort of like direction, like, you know, so you gotta, oh yeah, you make a startup and you know, if your crypto booms on there, you know, that it's all good. So I don't know, but I do feel as though, you know, we can apply some of those same techniques, but you know, you have to do it inside of neighborhoods and in communities and try to go from there.
There was one question that has been like bubbling on my mind, and it actually kind of seems that. Please fact check me again, everybody. I thought that I read that China is trying to make it that individuals are not allowed to hold crypto anymore, and they're shifting people into the digitized yuan. Now I could be completely wrong with this, but I did think that I saw that. So the reason that I bring that up and the question that I'm going to bring up is FDR in, I think it was 1933, said you can't own gold anymore. You know, tried to make it that, you know, people couldn't hold gold anymore because, you know, the central bank needed it, or so forth. Question would be, is there any concern of government saying you cannot engage with crypto? And then the follow-up question to that would be, is it developed enough now that there's a way that we can hold it outside of them being able to really dictate it? Like, has it become to a position that they can't exactly tell us that yet?
I think that's the way it always has been. Like, I think that's what it started as, essentially. I don't think anyone can tell you that you can't necessarily. Not if you have the technology to essentially like access, you know, I can't think of the correct word, like an exchange, right? Like if you have the ability to access an exchange, and you have the means to transfer funds, no one can restrict you from buying it. I think that's actually one of the primary draws.
So just to jump back in, I found the link that I was trying to look for, and I think that they're trying to roll it out. Sorry, ROLL. It says China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, has drafted a law to legalize the digital yuan and outlaw digital currencies issued by anyone else competing with it. Meanwhile, the central bank has been cracking down on gambling sites that use the stablecoin Tether. So I don't know if they would consider. I don't know if Bitcoin would be competing with it or whatever, but this was where I was trying to get the question from.
Yeah, no, I think I like what Brento was saying in regards to this is one of the beauties of the actual technology itself, is that it's censorship resistant, blah blah blah. And obviously there are like many ways that central parties can put checks and balances to, you know, track people, whatnot. We could talk all day about the mass surveillance state all over the world, not just in China but in the West as well. I'm sure I know Turing has spoken about that as well in the past. Yeah, like I always think of this meme that I saw. It's like a closed door with a lock, and instead of the actual bolt inside the lock, it's like a What's It crisp, and essentially it's supposed to symbolize the bank's attempts to actually stop something like decentralized, open, censorship-resistant cryptocurrencies. They can try if they want to, but the protocol is coded such that it doesn't really matter. Like people can access the protocol regardless of who's trying to stop them, which I think is beautiful. But again, we can't really take our eyes off of the other things that they could do to try to step in and yeah.
Could they try to legislate against digital wallets and then make everybody have to use like hard wallets, and then due to the hard wallet, would it be harder to exchange from one person to another?
No. No.
Like again, they could legislate that. That's the thing. They could legislate it, but if someone has access, like there's almost no way to stop someone from sending a transaction. A transaction from an open, decentralized, censorship-resistant cryptocurrency, for instance. And this is why I keep like prefacing it with those specific terms, because on the question of whether these central bank currencies are actual cryptocurrencies, like I think they are, because cryptocurrencies themselves, it's not decentralized, open, permissionless by default. These are just the ones that we seem to gravitate towards. And so there are many projects that aren't as decentralized as something as others, right? But they'd still be considered cryptocurrencies. And I think this is something that we need to always keep an eye on, because there may be like someone coming in saying, for instance, oh, this is our project, we're gonna do, this is our main use case, for instance. But when people don't do their due diligence, or they don't like do your own research, as what we say in the cryptocurrency community, people can, invest in a coin or to stand a coin that isn't actually adhering to what they thought it would, right? Like something like EOS, for instance, there's been a lot of controversy as to whether that's actually decentralized or not. There's other protocols like Hyperledger, which is essentially used to is mainly used by like the companies that essentially want to hang on to their own hegemonic powers whilst leveraging blockchain technology. So that's something to really to kind of elaborate on, just to put it that way. But no, I think in the past 3 years, we've definitely seen different iterations of these technologies coming out in various ways, and this kind of like ties into how I got into the industry in the first place. Like in early 2017, I remember seeing a podcast of people talking about the potential use cases of blockchain technology, and they were talking about like I was saying before, like peer-to-peer travel, supply chain management, land ownership for people in the developing world, right? And it wasn't until late 2017 did we have that big explosion where the price of Bitcoin went from like $500 to 20,000 in the space of like a month. And then all these projects come in, and then they have like half decent websites and
Right.
plagiarize white papers, and they raise billions upon billions upon billions, right? And then they don't have anything to show for it, because the actual technology itself is basically vaporware. They just want to come in and to reinsert the same contradictions that we're seeing in our current system, right? People just coming in trying to benefit themselves, as opposed to actually developing the products that can actually do what their projects claim to do. And it's not that hard to do. People lost so much money investing in 2017, 2018 on these projects that sound good. You get the pump and then you get the dump. People get dumped on every single week. I'm sure a lot of you have seen on crypto Twitter. It was absolutely insane. Almost every week there was a new project coming about in the horizon, someone chilling a specific coin, saying this is going to be the next big thing, this is going to replace Bitcoin. And almost all of them, like 95% of them, are not even like, they haven't really even updated their pages in the past like year or two, right? So
I want to bump in on the security aspect. I mean, the U.S. government can't even stop TrickBot right now, which is currently attacking our hospitals, and we're considering the idea that this TrickBot Spider Wizard group might try to attack the election, and in the face of our inability to control that, I think that we will definitely have the ability to control our own data as people. We will be able to control our wallets. There's no getting around the idea that cryptography resists the state.
So what I wanted to do, go ahead, Brento, and then I'll jump in.
Oh, I was going to finish by saying, when you were asking about China, making the law to ban it, and obviously you can always access it, but yeah, maybe they might just make that law just so that they can seize your assets if you're engaging in it anyway, right? I mean, technically they can really do anything they want, but usually even governments that are going to do that might like to make up excuses for why they're going to do it. So they could just be like, it's illegal for you to have these assets, and then they could take them or something,
What I wanted to do for the final, like 15 or 20 minutes, and then let everybody give themselves an introduction out, try to like drive some, people to your content and so forth, was just kind of like open it up to what were some things that you wish that we could have like spoken about today, but we didn't exactly, kind of get to. And I'm going to start with maybe Ridvan, and then we'll just go, clockwise, and kind of like leave the last, like I said, about 15 minutes, kind of open, just to see, what didn't I get to be able to push forward and ask.
Personally, for myself, I really don't care that much about what currency I should hold them by. I only care about smart contracts and oracles, because I know that once staking once Chainlink releases staking, that I'll be paid by putting my link in an Oracle node, and then I'll get rewarded by it. So it's like a feedback loop of wealth, right? I get paid in links, I stake my links, get my links back, and get paid in a tiny amount of link. And then, of course, if you look at who's using link and what links will be used for, it's going to be insane. And I actually think it's more valuable than any sort of currency. And even I'm super bullish. I think it's going to be even worth more than Bitcoin. That's how bullish I am on it. And the reason why for this, as I mentioned before, without a decentralized Oracle system, a blockchain cannot really talk and communicate with the outside world. It's because it's immutable. That's the feature of a blockchain. So you need some sort of Oracle system to deliver the off-chain data through an API, and that could be whatever, weather data, the temperature, the outcome of a football game, derivatives, fluctuation of currencies, etc., etc., and then put that on the smart contract. And then you look at, well, what's the value of this contract, and then you can look that up. I think the general value of a contract these days is like $20,000, and we're just talking normal contracts here. And then you look at the derivatives markets, which numbers in quadrillions, right? And if you just factor in that, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they say that about maybe in 2027, maybe 5 to 10% of all the contracts is going to move on to the smart contract. Well, all these smart contracts that are moving over, all these contracts that are moving over to the smart contract, they're going to need oracles, right? Because it's not going to function without oracles. And then you got the questions, well, what about privacy and all that? Because, yeah, it is kind of scary because all the information that's on a public ledger can be tracked. Well, they're working on that too with Mexico's and Deco, as I talked about before. You go on deco.works, that's the website, pretty simple, and look it up, what it does and how it hides your identity. It proves, for example, that you're 18. Let's say you want to engage in something and buy it, but they demand proof that you're 18. Well, you don't have to show any documentation because through Deco, through the decentralized Oracle system, you can then just deliver a true or false, yes, this person is over 18, without ever submitting any form of ID. So they're looking at that. They're even looking at front-running attacks, if anyone knows what that is. Like, for me, Chainlink is super based. They're solving every problem because they're having all these super academic people coming, Ari Jules, Alex Coventry, Fang Zhang, Thomas Hodge, Sergey Nasrov, Steve Ellis. I can go on. Eamon Gunsired, Ed Felton. They're all working together to solve these problems because they're all talking about it. So what we're worried about, which we are rightfully worried about, they're also thinking about it, trying to come with a solution. And we don't really have to worry about, in my opinion, about that. What we just have to worry about is the rate of adoption and how it happens. Like, is there going to be some sort of crisis, right, where everything tanks and everybody flees from the US dollar and sinks their assets into, for example, Bitcoin? Or is it going to happen gradually? Or is it going to be a mix, like some countries, it happens adoption overnight because of some crisis, or if it also happens gradually there? So, buy Chainlink for people who stay poor. That's what I advise. I'm 99% in Chainlink, my portfolio. I'm not even kidding.
Again, none of us can tell you anything to do, so don't take notes and then make your own decisions.
Yeah,
I appreciate the disclosure.
One last explanation. So if you're worried about how it works, right? There's going to basically be a website, and let's say you want to issue a smart contract, and you put the parameters there. I want these nodes to have X amount of reputation, and I want it to be connected to certain APIs, right? That's connected. So the users then, they bid on the contract, like say, hey, I have a good reputation and my node is connected, for example, to Weather API. And then the user then selects these nodes. The nodes then returns the data as the smart contracts get executed, and then they get rewarded. So that's how it kind of operates. And it also in a decentralized manner, because if you centralize everything, you basically put the power in one basket, if you want to say that, and the risks increases. So the more spread out it is, the less risk there is, because everybody, of course, wants to be able to act as an honest actor and not risk their link keys. Because if you deliver faulty data in your stake node, well, you lose it, and nobody wants to lose that.
Interesting. Yeah. What did you wish we could have covered a little bit more, Ten?
I'm very curious. I mean, I don't know anything about this, but licensing, like, I know a contract in and of itself is kind of and how I know a contract in and of itself is like, the terms are there, but in terms of like in relation to the software movement, like the free software movement, open source software, we have licenses that have certain, terms. Like the terms are like a little bit more explicitly explicitly stated. I'm kind of like very interested in seeing like where that's going to go. Also, I'm getting one of the things, like I said, I'm very passionate about is getting it to people on the ground in terms of like educating people about cryptography, and how they can use it in their day-to-day lives. That in order for us to have reached that general, that I guess that baseline of capability that for people to have to be able to do things like, you know, maybe not just send transactions but also vote or to do certain other things, like other things that are not just solely based around the monetary side of things. So I guess that would be where I'm coming from when to answer the question, what are some of the things we haven't covered? Some of the things that aren't just purely financial. It's kind of hard for me to put them into words, but those are the things that I really like to think about.
Yeah. What about you, Brento?
I don't really have anything other than I just think when staking for Ethereum starts, I guess I just wanted to explain like the difference between proof of stake and proof of work. And proof of work is what we described earlier. You know, this is for, I'm sure some people know, but proof of work, you know, was the running computers to solve puzzles to confirm the network. And Ethereum is planning on moving to, and I guess Chainlink too, to staking, where basically instead of running a computer and doing work to secure the network, you basically put a small kind of like investment, a stake of what you would own on the network, and that the network basically talks to that, and if it lies, you lose it, and if it tells the truth, you get paid. And that's kind of like, that's a very, very, very low resolution way of how they're going to try and move away from running computers and sucking up electricity to make it run.
Go ahead, Monty.
Okay, so Montreal Player, I mean, what didn't we talk about? Man, there's so many things we didn't talk about or want to talk about, but I mean, whatever, patience. There's so much out there. But yeah, I guess when I do talk, I'm kind of a tech guy as well. I'm a software developer, so I really do appreciate, I guess, all the technical projects that come around blockchain. But the thing that interests me the most is the possibility of a hard money, of a hard currency that's not controlled by centralized institutions, by centralized fragile institutions, and how and I'm going to talk to all the lefties out there. It's funny. Sorry, we were talking about one of the challenges I find is that unfortunately the crypto space is kind of like an Austrian economist's wet dream, right? In terms of being a hard currency, and unfortunately that's associated with, I guess, right-wing politics and stuff. So you start talking about it, and then all of a sudden the shields go up, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to hear about this, right? And so and it's a shame, because I feel like it's one of the backbone tools that is absolutely vital in disincentivizing things like consumerism, in incentivizing local social safety nets, more prosperity locally, intergenerational wealth, redistribution of assets and resources, having something that's not under the control of banks and governments and companies to help us transact with each other, and how the dynamic. I usually talk about this ad nauseum, right? About how the dynamics of having I guess, influence your individual decisions, and how they can help you build these communities. They can help you trade wealth and not value everything in money. It's funny. It's like it's a technology that's about money, but I think the big boon for society is that it makes things not about the money anymore. It's like money is something you just don't even want to deal with anymore. You just want to keep it in a box somewhere and find ways not to spend it. And that's how we can build relationships with each other. That's how we can localize. That's how we can build communities, that aren't dependent on some far off idea that's keeping us all separated. And anyways, I wish we'd gotten more into that, and why what I'm saying isn't actually a fairy tale. But that'll be for another week, hopefully next week. And that's normally the kind of things that I end up talking about in my stream. So if you want to find out if you want to find out how crypto technology is going to build your leftist utopia, come see me. Twitch.tv/Montreal Player.
Yeah, we
there
will.
you
We
go.
are going to
Is that
go
a-
back.
is that
We
a
are going to
decent
go
plug?
back. We are going to go back around so people can replug their stuff at the end too. So I mean, it was an excellent one. But yeah, we have Carl, Your Environment Seattle, and then we have Saber to finish up with, and then I do want to give everybody an opportunity to promote their work, and then we'll kind of like wrap it up.
Great. So I think that one thing that I love to advocate for is alternative energy, and I'll get around to that when I plug. But the things that I need to talk about when I really want to get acceptance is to talk about the technological progress, the historic failures, and the workarounds or the solutions to those failures. So I'd love to hear more about the advent of Ethereum, the Ethereum Classic fork, and the problems that occurred in those sort of early smart contract days, and then the evolution towards proof of stake, which I'm incredibly excited for, because as everyone is very aware of, Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity, and that makes it an enemy of the left in some ways because it's anti-environmental to use so much electricity. It's consumerist in a way. So those are the kind of topics that I look forward to hearing about in the coming weeks.
Really quickly to jump in, I have been thinking of a frame to explain how the energy demands of Bitcoin is actually less than the energy demanded by fiat. And one little way that I would try to like put this forward is if you look at fracking and shale energy in the United States, it was all built around thinking that they're going to have $75 barrels to be able to sell them at. So it was all funded by fiat debt credit creation, whereas like that never really should have been able to be funded. So I hear this one, and I'm trying to think through a lens of beginning to explain how, while yes, Bitcoin uses 1/3 of 1% of the entire world's energy at the moment, the damage that we're doing to the planet via the credit creation, via the debt creation, via the fiat monetary system, via funding a lot of these projects that shouldn't be getting the funding, specifically, fracking in the United States, is really actually consuming more and doing more damage than like Bitcoin would be at the moment. So I think that will be a good one to talk about next time, Carl. I don't know if you have any quick thoughts about that.
Very interesting to get into, actually, because I would have the here's here's what a hard currency, aka Bitcoin or whatever, how it would reduce like what we actually consume, and then is it actually worth it? Although I would agree, optimizing even that would probably be beneficial in the future. But
yeah, and Saber, where do you think that we missed out on a couple things that you wanted to speak about?
Yeah, I'll say a few things first. First and foremost, yeah, I believe that the question of energy in regards to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is like a whole other it will take up a whole 2 hours or even more, which I look forward to participating in as well. Which is again why I believe proof of stake has a lot of promise in regards to energy consumption and things like that. But yeah, no, I want to touch on maybe two things. First thing is, again, when it comes to like my kind of journey, like I said before, I came into the crypto community in like 2017, and at that time I wasn't really like, my politics were very, very different than what they were now. And like I noticed that over time it seemed like the people in the community, especially on crypto Twitter, was not really talking that much about like the underlying things that were causing the problems that we're trying to solve. So yeah, like if you think that left Twitter has a lot of drama, then I'd urge you to try and dig into the crypto Twitter drama in 2018. It was absolutely insane. You had like the traders going head to head against the fundamental people talking about Bitcoin maximalists and whatnot. And so yeah, from there, I kind of looked deeper into like some of the economic questions and whatnot, which kind of led me to what I'm doing right now. And as I said, I've been looking for ways to really synthesize like political theory with the new technologies that can potentially solve some of these problems. As we've talked about, right? There's a lot of theory that makes sense, but it seems like the technological side is the other side of the coin, where we can actually put these into practice in ways that we don't necessarily have to rely on like really insecure systems, because we are talking about a global system. We are talking about trying to replace the global financial system as it is right now, which has a lot of problems. But yeah, there's that. But no, in terms of specifically, like one of the things that I really want to dig into at some point in the future is is in regards to the question of artificial intelligence. And this is something that I've been interested in before I came into contact with blockchain technology, and I've always been thinking about the potentials for artificial general intelligence and how that can be used to potentially transform humans into like transhuman entities of like cyborg limbs and whatnot, transform going into space and all these kind of things. But like the more I look into how that would actually come about, there seems to be a very peculiar problem, and that is in regards to how the technology is actually being produced. Right, this technology is not going to like fall out of the sky. It seems like it's going to come as a byproduct of the most powerful companies in the world developing technology to increase profits in their own specific sector, whether it's in the stock market trying to develop algorithms to trade better, or whether it's social networks trying to develop more sophisticated algorithms to make people more hooked into their platforms, to sell them ads and whatnot, or whether it's governments trying to increase their authoritarian mass surveillance powers, and it will kind of arise out of that. And so I believe that blockchain technology has the potential to take the promise of artificial intelligence and then decentralizing it in a distributed ledger. And I believe that one project that has really opened my eyes to this is SingularityNet, and the founder of that project is the person who created the Sophia robot that I'm sure many of you have seen. He's helped to do some of the software behind that, and yeah, he sort of echoes the same sentiments. The technology can allow us to really transform a lot of the systems that we have right now, but if it's in the hands of a very concentrated number of people, the top like 1% of the 1%, or whatever it is, then it's just not going to be used to benefit human beings. And we've seen that precedent set throughout history. Whenever a new technology comes about, it's mainly used to protect that, whether it's like nuclear energy in the 20th century, or like guns even a few centuries before, and how that was used to secure their position in Africa and take Africans as slaves to the new world, so-called new world. So yeah, no, like this sort of wraps up what we've been talking about in general, and that is just that this seems to be the first time, one of the first times in history, where the technologies that would actually allow us to circumvent this entire system is really at our fingertips. Right, like you can be at home protecting or like supporting certain projects that are solving these problems. We can be at home learning to program these things ourselves, if that's the thing. And all the information is more or less free. You can watch however many tutorials you want to, however many streams or lectures or podcasts, papers, theory, and just put it all together and form something really, really powerful to challenge the powers that be. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that for that was wonderful. I think that for the next time when we get together, we can use the group Discord that we have, and everybody can kind of like put forward like topics they would like to kind of discuss. I think that for being the first time that we all got together and literally having no kind of plan of what anything was going to be spoken about, I think it actually went very well, and I appreciate the fact that you all gave 2 hours of your time on a Sunday evening for some people, Sunday afternoon for others, almost a Sunday and a Sunday morning for some of the other people. So we're going to start back with Saber again and go counterclockwise. That way you can announce your YouTube channels, announce your Twitch streams, your Twitters and so forth. Try to like drive some traffic towards it, and then I'll do a little bit of a sign out, and we can kind of like part from there.
Cool. Oh yeah. Again, thank you very much for bringing me on to here. I've been looking forward to this for a little while, and yeah, no, I see. It seems like you're one of the people on Twitch that I really enjoy just hanging around with. We don't have to deal with the nonsense that happens on elsewhere. It's just a very like concentrated thing. I learn a lot about foreign policy or like the economics in general, and even certain topics that other people would just write off straight off the bat, which is cool, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate coming on to. I mean, I look forward to coming on to the show again to talk about more things in regard to crypto. But yeah, in terms of my own content, I make video essays on YouTube, Specifically, right now, I'm focusing mainly on Afrofuturism, which is essentially a cultural phenomenon that kind of puts together like African history, fashion, technology to kind of envision a technologically advanced future, and how and using all the tools that we have available to us to really project ourselves into the future, to envision a liberating future that doesn't have to that kind of circumvents all the kind of things that we've spoken about. And yeah, one of the things that I really do feel like is important to recognize, and something that I try to convince my leftist friends of, is that we really do have the potential to push that forward with certain technologies like cryptocurrencies and blockchains. So yeah, I'll probably leave a link in the chat if anyone wants to follow me. So yeah, that's all. I appreciate this convo. It was a fun conversation.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Carl, would you like to go?
Yeah, thanks everyone for your time. I'm learning bits and pieces that I'm sure I could have looked into before, but it's definitely helping to fill out my knowledge. YESTV.org will redirect to my YouTube, or Your Environment Seattle, all one word, on Twitch. My Twitter, it's Carl Alex Pauls, with Carl with a K. And I am a software developer in my day job, and I've been into cryptography for a very long time. So this is an incredibly exciting field, and I'm happy to be here, even if it is as a skeptic. So thanks.
Go ahead, Monty.
Let me unmute here. There you go. Yeah, Montreal Player. You can call me Monty. What do I do on my channel? I like talking to other streamers. I talk about localism. I talk about divesting from larger structures, decentralizing power. I talk about an entrepreneurial approach to bottom-up self-organizing. And I like approaching concepts free of political, or as free as I can be, about political slant. Yeah, that's basically what I talk about. Come join me. Deep chats, dark humor. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Brento.
Hey guys. I'm not really streaming too much. I found some content I might want to be streaming again soon. It's a guy named Lex Friedman, and he has some great podcasts, not crypto related, although he does talk to Vitalik Buterin. So if you see me on, stop on by or drop a follow. Otherwise, you might see me on some panels talking to people about politics and current events and relative things. So thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, the podcast that Brento was alluding to is called the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
By the way,
Yes.
there's also a podcast with Ben Goetzel, which is the person I was talking about decentralized AI and whatnot. He's also had an interview with Lex Friedman as well. So it is that.
10B.
Hello, everybody. My name is TinB2. I don't really do any Twitch streaming at the moment. I'm thinking about possibly doing YouTube video, maybe on software licensing, software development, maybe just more the abstract things. I'm much better when I can actually like write things out. So I know I've kind of been scatterbrained here, but I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Turing, for having me on, and everybody here. I've learned a lot from each little pieces here and there. So thank you. Follow me, 10B2, Twitter.
Is there an underscore before the 10?
Yes, I posted the link in the chat.
And yeah, Ridvan. You're muted, our friend.
There we go. As I mentioned before, I do stream. I don't stream on a regular schedule or anything. I kind of stream like when the mood strikes me. And when I do stream, it's typically quite boring. I'm thinking about changing it up and just stream educational videos about smart contracts and oracles, and basically, and also the challenges that involves. So it'll be a lot of Chainlink related stuff, because I am a Chainlink bull. You can follow me on my Twitter. I'm more active there as well. Let's see if I can paste it. Oh, no, it's not a person. There we go. And I also want to, by the way, I want to shout out what 10B2 linked earlier, which is the Blockchain Socialist website. So if you are a leftist and you want to get a leftist perspective on blockchain, go check that website out. They have a podcast too, because the problem is with a lot of leftists, as you mentioned before, Turing, people associated with the, or was it your environment, Seattle, that they associate with the ANCAPs and RIDEs and Austrian economics and et cetera, et cetera. And it's really not that case. And blockchain is about transforming our current society, and it can be transformed for the betterment.
Yeah, that was a little bit of what Monty kind of brought up. And last but not least, I was the I guess de facto host for today. I'm Touring News, or Brad, if you wanted to call me that. You can find most of my content live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Touring News. Usually I'll wake up in the morning and try to read a lot of just international newspapers, international stories, and try to remind people in the United States that there's a lot that happens outside of our borders that we need to discuss. I've been trying to do more and more conversations like this. I've recently spoken to some people about nuclear engineering, about monetary systems, about organizing. So there will be more content like this uploaded onto the YouTube channel. And this is going to be the end of the first Tales from the Crypto podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be seeing you another